And we're back to talking about judicial overhaul in Israel. Legal scholars from Poland and Hungary are now warning of the judicial overhaul's dangers to democracy. Now, Israel's proposed legal reforms have been compared to moves made in Poland and Hungary in recent years, two nations which have undergone democratic backsliding, you could say, in recent years. But the question is, are they comparable, and how have these changes to these judicial systems in Hungary and Poland ultimately impacted the economy? Well, joining us now to break this down is Professor Zoltan Pogatsa, a lecturer at the Faculty of Economics in the University of Western Hungary, and Professor Baum, director at the Brandeis Institute at the College of Management. Okay, so first of all, break down the changes made in both Poland and Hungary for those of our viewers who don't really have a clear background, and try to make this easy to understand.
I'll make it very simple to understand, because essentially these are very similar reforms. Technically, they may be different because in Hungary, the constitution has been changed, overhauled. In Poland, there has been no constitutional changes because it's very difficult to change the constitution in Poland. As you know, in Israel, we're talking about changing basic laws, which are comparable to a constitution. But in all these cases, what we see is an attack on the judiciary, trying to capture the judiciary by basically appointing judges by the government. This happened in Hungary. This happened in Poland, big time, and this is what is proposed also in Israel. Also, what you see is curtailing the ability of the courts to review decisions either of the parliament or of the executive branch. So having the executive branch gain more power compared to other branches of government. This is essentially what's happening. There are other similarities that you could talk about. For example, trying to take control of the media in Hungary and in Poland, taking control or some control over the public service so that it can become more compliant and you could see less gatekeepers. But this is essentially the same thing. I think there's a broad agreement among lawyers and political scientists that if you look at Poland and Hungary and Israel, the same reforms are going in the same direction. And that's why these are countries that we can learn from if we look at the long term, because we have 12 years of experience of Viktor Orban since he won the elections in 2010 in Hungary, and more than 7 years since Law and Justice won the election and took power in Poland. So we know what's going to happen in the economy, or we could learn from what happened in the economy there and try to think about what's going to happen in Israel.
So just to kind of break that down into summarize it in a couple of sentences, we saw in Poland in 2017 a law that basically gave the parliament full control over appointing judges. So, the Israeli government's reforms do stop just short of that, because it would not be full control. It would basically be shifting the amount of control in the selection committee. In Hungary, though, we did see a focus more on essentially affecting who the judges are. They lowered the retirement age, they booted out judges, and replaced them with friendly appointments for the ruling government, and also gave, like you said, more power over the courts to the president of the National Judicial Office.
It's very similar. We brought to Israel, actually, we're supposed to have a conference today of Polish economists and lawyers and Hungarian. They're all here in Israel, and actually they're stuck here until the airports are open. So literally the Polish and Hungarians are with us at the moment.
Wow.
But we've been discussing this with them. And for example, one of the things that my colleagues from Poland are explaining to me is that taking over the judiciary is a process that takes time, because judges have to retire and you have to appoint judges in their stead. But if you look at the judiciary in Poland today, it's pretty well known for the Polish people that 10 out of 10,000 judges, 3,000 are political appointments by the government. They actually know that. So you know, when you appear before a judge, you basically know who appointed that judge and who's he loyal to.
Right. So I'd like to turn to Professor Pogatsa. In Hungary, how have the legal reforms impacted both Hungary and also Poland?
Well, I've heard often that there is such a thing as a Hungarian economic miracle, and that Viktor Orban has brought a certain model which has basically made Hungary a success story. I don't actually see that from data. Hungary in 2010, when Viktor Orban came to power, was about 70% of the European Union's average. Today, it's also a little bit higher, 72%, but there's no major change in terms of the relative position of the country, especially given that the Mediterranean countries have basically slipped down, so the average has slipped down as well. Effectively, we are the seventh poorest member state from the low end of the range. Hungary is still an economy which functions on low wages, trying to attract foreign direct investment, no high value-added sectors in the economy. The changes to the labor code have affected Hungarian workers negatively. It's very liberalized, it's very pro-capital. Trade union rights have been curtailed. And effectively also education has been defunded, which shows up in this sort of statistics about the PISA records, for instance, the educational attainment records as well. So the Hungarian educational and healthcare systems have slipped as well.
You know, I think that what's so interesting about this is kind of the outlook that it gives us towards what could potentially take place in Israel. You know, how can this information forecast the future of what could potentially take place in Israel if these judicial reforms ultimately are passed?
I see quite a lot of similarity between. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that obviously there are a lot of similarities, as Zoltan pointed out, and some of them are in sort of based in the fact that Hungary and Poland are both under the envelope of the European Union. They have less social chasms. They come in many instances, they come from a better position compared to Israel. Israel's economy is stronger than those of Poland and Hungary, but we can see some of the things that are obviously manifesting themselves here in Israel now. It's you've talked about it a few minutes ago. It's a fluctuation of the currency compared to the dollar and the euro, and the inflation rate and the interest rate. These are issues that will influence the lower echelons of Israeli society, actually voters of the current government. And one interesting point that I should mention, and that Zoltan mentioned as well, is the issue of education. We've found that both in Hungary and in Poland, and we weren't aware of that before, education has been left out. The salaries of teachers, both in Hungary and in Poland, have dropped significantly, to the extent that Polish have been told me that some of the teachers prefer to leave their jobs as teachers and go to work as supermarket cashiers because they actually make more money in that job than in teaching, and that has a long-term effect. So you know, I wouldn't say that the economy would collapse tomorrow, but the long-term effects of what we're seeing now are going to be very dire, particularly to people who are not well off.
Professor Pogatsa, I'm interested to hear your response also, and you know, the questions about a brain drain. Were any brain drains witnessed in Hungary and Poland following these changes to the judicial system?
Yeah, I was shaking my head because actually, yes, in Hungary, the same thing happened. Teachers left their jobs in droves. Basically, you can earn about twice as much nowadays as a supermarket cashier as you can as a teacher. We have a severe lack of teachers. We have a severe lack of doctors. A lot of these people have moved to take jobs in Austria, Germany, in the west of Europe. So there has definitely been a brain drain out of Hungary because of both the political situation, but also the economic situation.
Well, you know, I'm interested for kind of a wrap up in terms of obviously this conference that was supposed to be held today in Israel and is not taking place as a result of the massive strikes that we're seeing across the country. You know, what was kind of the hope during that discussion? What were kind of the most standout points and highlights that those scholars taking part wanted to make sure that the Israeli public is aware of?
I think what we had in mind is actually getting a more accurate information, because there are a lot of accusations going on that economists are voicing their long-term projections on their political beliefs and so on. And what is actually what Brandeis Institute is doing is looking at the research, at the data, and trying to form more concrete data so that we can evaluate processes. That's why we wanted to look at Poland and Hungary, because they're as similar as you can get, and use these as test cases. Because otherwise, you hear, okay, China is not a democracy and it's doing very well. Singapore is not a democracy and it's doing very well. Perhaps so, but we're not Singapore or China. So looking at these two countries allows us to make some projections about the future. Of course, the process in Israel is significantly more accelerated than the one that you see in Hungary and Poland. In Hungary, it took more than a year to pass all these reforms, and in Israel, we're talking about months. So perhaps what we're seeing there is going to be seen more accelerated in the Israeli economy, because obviously, if we lose control, then the economy is going to spin out of control as well.
Well, I'd like to thank you both so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time on Business Beat.